Yeah, Jared, in the Eastern Conference, you got 7 seed Orlando Magic facing off against the Atlanta Hawks, the 8 seed on Tuesday night, and then obviously the loser of that matchup will face the winner of the 9-10 game, the Bulls and the Heat. How do you see those two games shaping out?
Well, it kind of feels like this has turned into the Atlanta Hawks Invitational, hasn't it? The play-in tournament. But I think that they're going to run into a team that has been playing much better of late. I mean, you kind of look at it, the play-in tournament with Orlando, Chicago, and Miami. All those three teams have been playing much better basketball over the last couple of weeks heading into this tournament. Not any that I think would give Cleveland or Boston any fear factor, but I think it is interesting how they are playing better. I think the Orlando offense has started to get a little better from how putrid it has been at times, particularly without a true point guard running the show with Jalen Suggs out. But I think Orlando is able to get a win there. And then I think ultimately Chicago is a little better than Miami.
Well, all right. So you've got West, Golden State in the 7th spot, hosting number 8 Memphis on Tuesday as well. And the loser of this matchup will face the winner of the Sacramento-Dallas matchup. Which two teams do you think will end up advancing to the first round matchup out West?
Well, I think ultimately, Golden State, even though they've had some trouble in this game in the past, I think Golden State being at home, playing with, even though they lost that game, I think they played fairly well against the Clippers on Sunday. I think they ultimately win. And then I think it's probably Memphis that comes out and gets the 8 seed, beating the winner of that Sacramento-Dallas game.
Yeah, that should be fun. Now, at the top of the show, I dedicated this to the Houston Rockets, Jared, and as I'm sure you're aware, just the improvement they made from last year in 2024 to 2025 has been quite remarkable, given that they are the 2nd seed this year. So my question, just with this young core finally getting their chance to get some playoff exposure, hosting a first-round series, do you think whatever team emerges as the 7th seed out West would have a chance to maybe knock off this Rockets group, just given their lack of experience, especially if it's like a Golden State team?
Yeah, Ross, I'm with you. I think completely the opposite from the Eastern Conference. I think that the West, particularly if it's Golden State, does have a shot here. And this is no disrespect to Houston. You talked about their turnaround this year. If it wasn't for the two teams in the Eastern Conference that have had massive jumps like Cleveland and Detroit, who's done something that we've never seen in the history of the NBA, tripling their win total, we'd be talking about Ime Udoka for Coach of the Year in the NBA. And I just want to point something out. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but on Sunday, when the Rockets already had the 2 seed locked up, and there was nothing to play for, not only did Ime Udoka play their guys, start all of his main guys on Sunday's season finale, but they fell behind by 20 points into the 3rd quarter and still had his guys out there. Understanding a couple of things. Number one, they're not going to play until Saturday or Sunday of next week, knowing that they've got that week off. He's got young guys. It was so refreshing. It's amazing that we have to praise this, but it was so cool to see that the mentality that this Rockets team plays with. We often talk about an old cliche of your team resembles the mentality of the coach. That doesn't happen most of the time. It's just something we want to happen. With the Rockets, it genuinely does happen. With that said, they are young, and history has proven that teams need to take a step back. Teams need to take a tough loss before they find a way to advance into the playoffs. And I think it's no slight against Houston. I think they are going to struggle moving forward. And I think like a team like the Warriors would be a team that they would not want to see in the first round. And I think it would be an epic matchup, Houston and Golden State.
You know, in watching games all year long, to me, there are really 3 teams that I've noticed that played with just this off the charts intensity, more so than many others. Houston, of course, Detroit, of course, and then Oklahoma City when it came to the defensive end. I told these guys a few times along the way, watching that team play defense, OKC, is like watching a team in hockey on the power play, because it always looked like it was 6 against 5 with those guys. But those 3 teams are like the 3 hardest playing teams in the league, I feel.
Yeah, there's no question. I completely agree. Like Oklahoma City is like a pack of dogs, right? You let them loose, and to a certain extent, Houston's that way too. I mean, look at all the different skirmishes they got in. Detroit felt like they got into a fight every single night with guys, right? And so, yeah, you're excited about that because hopefully that even ramps up and intensifies into the postseason here.
Now let's go ahead and dive into the first round series in each conference that are already set in place, starting out with the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Jared. In the East area, you have the 6-seeded Pistons. You just talked about, and we just mentioned how much of a turnaround they've had, and now they get their first taste of playoff action, and seems like forever with that franchise. And now they have to go to play at Madison Square Garden against a Knicks team that, let's face it, hasn't exactly stood out since the All-Star break with their play. How do you see a series like this turning out?
Yeah, I think ultimately the Knicks win it, but there feels like there's a lot of pressure here on the Knicks. And, for whatever it's worth, it feels like the Pistons are playing with free money, right? Because I don't think many people expected them to be. I thought that the Pistons coming into the year would be the 10 seed. I thought they would break through and make the play-in. The fact that they're avoiding the play-in is remarkable. And I think the Pistons are going to make this a fun series. I don't think by any imagination this is a sweep. I don't even think this is a 5-game series. I think this goes 6 or 7. I think this is a lot of fun. But with that said, the Knicks, it feels like it's like style points matter here for them and moving forward, because they need to take care of business. And then assuming they move forward, they can't get swept. They can't get their brains beat in by the Celtics. It just, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of rumors swirling around the Knicks right now. And you just have to wonder how much it's about not only winning, but how you win or how you lose.
Hey, Jared, real quick, when it comes to the Knicks, they made all the moves. They changed their roster around a lot in the offseason. I know we know what they've done against the upper level of this league. If they don't reach the conference finals, I know it's a tall task, but if they don't reach the conference finals, has this been I don't want to say a wasted season, but I guess in essence, considering what they gave up for Mikal Bridges and the deals they made, is it a disappointing season, put it that way?
Well, I hate to be a fence rider here, but I will be, because I understand where you're coming from on this, but I also don't think it's a wasted season. Number one, because like you said, you got to put it in perspective. I think the Celtics are just that good, right? And I don't think the Celtics are losing to anybody in the Eastern Conference this year. At the same time, I also think, like, if you're a Knicks fan, and I understand there's this, you've been waiting 50 years to contend for a championship, but the bottom line is it takes time in the NBA. Very few teams get put together and then automatically they go and contend for a championship, especially when you run into a buzzsaw like Boston. With that said, there is a lot of talent, and it does feel like some things are not meshing properly. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some changes if the Knicks do not get out of the second round of the playoffs.
We think of Detroit as kind of a young team, and in many ways they are. But one of the reasons that I was so high on them going into the season was because several of their key guys, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, and then, later on in the year, Dennis Schroeder, these guys have significant playoff experience. They just don't have it as a group with this team. Now, I think New York's probably going to win the series in 7. But I would not be shocked if Detroit wins it, because they beat New York 3 games out of 4 during the regular season.
Yeah, there's no question. And it's been interesting here to watch this Knicks offense, kind of 3 iterations, right? Before the Jalen Brunson injury, after the Jalen Brunson injury, and then after he's returned, right? So I think there's a lot going on there to see how, because the Knicks this year, truly, it felt like they're at their best when everyone's getting touches, when OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges are as much a part of the offense. But yeah, it'll be. I think you're right, Bruce. I think it goes 7.
Okay, so the 4 versus 5 matchup in the East is kind of like, Back to the Future, deja vu, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Indiana and Milwaukee in that first round for the second year in a row. So with the Bucks almost certain to be without Dame Lillard for the entire series, do they have any chance at revenge against Indiana?
Well, I mean, not only deja vu all over again because of the matchup, but because of the injury concerns. Remember last year it was Giannis who was out and then Lillard who missed the end of the series. And now this year it's Lillard. We don't know when he's going to play, if he's going to play at all, as you mentioned, with the blood clot in his calf. And you know, I've seen this Indiana team. I just did a TNT game with Indiana a couple of days ago. Saw them lock up or get a step towards locking up that 4 seed. I think Indiana has to be the favorite in this series, but the bottom line is the best player on the court is going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo, and we've seen his ability to take over series, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, but he's certainly capable of that. I think Indiana wins the series, but I think it's a really, really good series.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Giannis is capable of carrying the Bucks to victory, but he's going to probably need to average like 35 and 15 in order for that to happen.
Well, he could, right? I mean, he's basically been doing that for the last 2 weeks of the season.
Right.
Yeah, he definitely has. Now, one quick follow-up here on the Bucks for you, Jared. Given just kind of the financial constraints that they're in and the contracts that they have, what were your thoughts at their deadline moves? Obviously, it was tough to move away from Chris Middleton. His injury concerns and his reliability down the stretch when they needed him most, wasn't something they were going to bargain for. So they went and got Kuzma. They got a deal for Kevin Porter Jr., who's played a significant role for them here in the second half of the season. What were just your general thoughts? Do you think they did a decent job given kind of how handcuffed they were at the deadline?
Yeah, I think putting it in that context, yes. And I completely think they got an upgrade from Middleton over Kuzma. And I hated to see Middleton go because, I always go back to, and it's something I used to mention to Chris Middleton on a regular basis when I'd see him. He went from being literally on the worst team in basketball with Giannis that 1 year to all of a sudden a couple of years later contending for a championship in several years in a row, right? So like, to see that evolution, I think is really special. And he was really, truly part of that foundation to turn this thing around. And the guy always played hard. He just had some unfortunate injuries over the years, but they had a huge upgrade in athleticism in Kyle Kuzma. Now, to me, Kuzma's let them down on the offensive end, but for what he's not been able to give them offensively, he's really, I think, surprised some people on the defensive end and what he's been able to bring to the table for the Bucks. But they're going to need him to be a lot better. And I've even talked to him about this. He acknowledges this, more aggressive on the offensive end, being a little more selfish, looking to get his own shot. I think sometimes it's hard when you're in a lineup with Giannis because you often defer. But listen, this is a guy who has had experience playing with LeBron James. So he should understand when he's got to pick and choose his moments. He's going to be huge in this series. You mentioned Kevin Porter Jr. You're right. He's had a couple of big moments, and he had a game the other night that was just off the charts good, particularly in the fourth quarter, leading Milwaukee from that 24-point deficit to come back and stun Minnesota. He was huge in that fourth quarter, but it hasn't been good enough to put him in the starting lineup. Remember, when Damian Lillard got hurt, it was Porter who was the starting point guard. But then a few games later, Doc Rivers made the switch and went to Ryan Rollins to be the starting point guard, and Porter continues to come off the bench. So I think they're looking for a little more consistency, limit the turnovers, be a guy who can play within the offense. And it's really tough for guys that are used to playing with the ball. Damian Lillard felt this because Giannis is going to have the ball in his hands most of the time. We talk about Rollins or Porter, whoever's the point guard for the Bucks. The point guard is Giannis, right? Yeah. That's who the point guard is now. So how do those guys adjust and still find their way within this offense when they're not the primary ball handler?
Great point.
Hey, Jared, real quick, you mentioned how you saw the Pacers over the weekend. And I'm just curious, I said on the show a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever, if there was an all-NBA team for the second half of the season or post-All-Star break, Tyrese Halliburton would be on that list. He's put up some really ridiculous numbers here. Am I off base on that? It's really gone kind of, I don't want to say unnoticed, but it's been kind of quiet, as have the Pacers, I suppose, with all the other trades going on. How good has he been since the All-Star break, really?
Sensational. Like his splits are off the wall. His efficiency numbers, like he was really bad the first 2-3 months of the season. His splits are significantly up, 2-point percentage, 3-point percentage. And then the best part about him, which has always been a steady line of consistency, is his lack of turnovers, which is phenomenal with the amount that he has the ball in his hands. But I think this is, I'll take it a step further, Michael. We're going to talk about awards later. I know that, but when thinking about all NBA, I think Halliburton's going to get a lot of consideration for all NBA teams. Obviously not first team, probably not second team, but another guy too that we have to mention is Pascal Siakam. They are not anywhere near the 4 seed without Siakam, who has been the most consistent, reliable player on both sides of the basketball for the Pacers all year long. And then you add in Miles Turner, who, listen, I understand he's not going to get any postseason award consideration, but Miles Turner is back over the last 3 weeks, over the last like 12, 13 games, to being the shot blocker he was 3-4 years ago when he was winning the shot blocking title. I believe he won it twice. Like, he's blocking 3.5 shots per game over like the last 12, 13 games, which is pretty remarkable.
Now, Jared, real quickly here, and don't want to make any assumptions, so I got to ask you here, but is there any chance that the Celtics or Cavs could lose or at least get tested by a 7th or 8th seed out east in round 1?
I don't think in round 1. No, I think both. I think both Cleveland and Boston advance. Now, listen, the Donovan Mitchell ankle thing is one to watch. I've been told that he will be fine. There was still some swelling that he was dealing with as of late last week. But if it was the playoffs, we'd probably see him go. The one thing I'll tell you that I think is going to be interesting for the Cavaliers, game 1 Sunday, likely in the afternoon. How clunky will that game be with a week off? With guys who didn't play very much the last week of the season. Donovan Mitchell didn't play at all. I'm not saying the Cavs are in danger of losing the first round, but I'm saying watch out game 1 when you've got a team who's coming in off momentum, right? That team that got the 8th seed had just played 2 games, including a win Friday night. They're riding high. Meanwhile, the Cavs have downshifted the last 2 weeks, essentially, to get to this point. I think that could be an interesting game.
And if that number 8 seed should end up being the Chicago Bulls, that's a team that's kind of coming into the postseason with a little bit of a head of steam. I mean, they kind of were, kind of generic for most of the year. But, Kobe White is a bad man. I mean, and
not only him too. Like, Kobe White's been sensational. Josh Giddey has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Listen, for as good as Cleveland is defensively, and they are really good, their issue we know is on the perimeter. And that will be a lot of fun for us basketball fans to see how Kenny Atkinson draws up a defense where the 2 main focal points of the offense are on the perimeter with Giddey and Kobe White, the way those two have been playing.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier that you didn't think anybody that you thought Boston was going to probably come out of the East.
Yeah.
So, Cleveland was a 64 win team, Boston, or 65, I'm not sure. Why do you feel that Boston will prevail should they match up with Cleveland in the conference finals?
It goes back to me, history tells you a lot. And again, in the NBA, you've got to, except for that Pistons team, 04, there's very rarely a team, or that Celtics team, I should say, a couple of years later, that gets put together and then just wins. Particularly, I just think, how many games did Boston play this year where one of their main, or more of one of their main rotation players didn't play? I think if the Celtics really wanted to, and listen, Joe Mazzulla plays every game to win. I'm not questioning that at all. But there's a couple of games here this season that the Celtics didn't win because they didn't need to win. When you win a championship, you earn the right to downshift throughout the course of an 82-game schedule. And there is a difference, as we all know, between how you win and why you win in 82 games versus how and why you win in a playoff series. And I just think that history, that talent up top, the talent throughout the depth that this Boston team has, I think will go unmatched in the Eastern Conference this postseason.
I think Joe Mazzulla, Brad Stevens, those guys, exactly what you're saying. I mean, I think having won last year, they kind of realize, okay, we have the blueprint. This is what we do. And yeah, they risked losing a number of games along the way this year simply because they wanted to give people like, Jaylen Brown a night off, although he had enough nights off that he's not going to qualify for All NBA, which is unfortunate for him, but that's the way it goes. So, yeah, I mean, I said earlier in the year when we were doing this show, the Celtics this year kind of remind me of the 1995 Houston Rockets. They won it in 94 with their big season. Then in 95, they kind of took their foot off the gas during the regular season. They won like 47 games that year. But as soon as the playoffs hit, they floored it, and they won all 4 of their playoff series without home court advantage because they kind of knew what they had to do. And I think, how do you feel? Do you think that a team that has won is sort of freed up mentally, where they can kind of do what they got to do and just get to the playoffs healthy?
Absolutely. And there's a different rhythm and tempo to the playoffs, and going through that, know how to manage that is way different than going through 82 games. And I think I'm not taking anything away from Cleveland here, because I think Cleveland's building on something really special for a long time. Like I was just studying some stuff on Cleveland, and like the amount of guys that they have that are between their 5th and 7th year in the NBA, they've got such a long runway here, and they're going to be really good for a long time. But to me, Boston's built to win now, and having that experience and having that combination of the star power with Tatum and Brown, and to a certain extent, I think you could throw Porzingis into that level of star power when he's at his best and he's healthy. He's unguardable, right? When he's doing what he's doing. And then, you bring in the defensive mentality with Derek White and Drew Holiday, and just the bench, like Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser, the way these guys have been shooting the basketball off the bench. And I didn't even mention Al Horford, right? Like, I just think this is Boston's time.
Yeah, you mentioned that rhythm and flow of the playoffs, and obviously there's going to be a lot of key guys getting their first taste of that this year. 2 that really stand out to me that I'm looking forward to watching is one, Cade Cunningham, who had a tremendous season in Detroit. Obviously, under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden, of all places, is going to be a phenomenal experience for him. How he handles that will be big, but kind of more focusing on Cleveland, since they have loftier expectations. Evan Mobley. I mean, what are we going to see from this guy? I know that a lot of people came into this year having questions about that extension. Obviously, he proved a lot of us wrong with his play this year, because he had become a huge factor into why they were so successful this year on both ends of the court. How do you think he can fare in the playoffs when the pressure is at its biggest?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think he'll be phenomenal. I'm curious to see defensively every night, every other night when the playoffs are played. How does he do? Is he as willing of a shooter? I mean, to me, I'll be honest with you, and not to change the topic on you, but to me, a lot of what I'm looking forward to seeing with Evan Mobley is dependent on Donovan Mitchell. I've loved everything that Donovan Mitchell's been about this year. I think what he has done and the sacrifices he's made, less shots, less points, higher efficiency, I think all of that's been great. But now the lights are bright. Now it counts. And now, every win, the pressure is mounting. Does Donovan Mitchell, and I have no reason to doubt that he won't, but what I'm saying is, what I want to see is Donovan Mitchell play the same team-first basketball in the playoffs that has led him, in my mind, into the outskirts, but into the MVP conversation.
Yeah.
So you're moving on to the Western Conference here. One of the matchups, the 3-6 matchup, seems to be a really interesting one when you have a team like the Lakers, who really improved once Luka and LeBron got there, against a Minnesota team that was a disappointment for a good portion of the season, and then really caught, since the beginning of March, it was 16-4 or something. And people forget they're dealing with their own trade that they've had a whole year to experience, picking up Randall and DiVincenzo. How do you see this shaping out with the Lakers against a team like Minnesota that people forget made it to the conference finals a year ago?
Yeah, and listen, their own trade for Minnesota, but also not only that, but also dealing with the injuries, right? Randall at times, DiVincenzo at times. These guys have been banged up. You mentioned since beginning of March, right? And to me, the biggest thing that was a disappointment for Minnesota to start the year was how bad they were defensively. They turned it on defensively, and they became a top 10 team defensively, which at one point in the season I thought would be hard to achieve because of how poor they were playing defensively. And that was their calling card. As good as Anthony Edwards was, and you mentioned Karl Anthony Towns last year and what they could do with their offense, that's one thing. Their calling card was on defense, and they really found a way to turn it up over the last couple of months of the season, become an elite defensive team. I think this series is going to be fascinating. Ultimately, Ant-Man versus Luka, tremendous. Can we say LeBron can be an X factor here? And remember, I hate to bring this up, but Julius Randle has kind of been a letdown in the postseason, the limited number of times he's been there. And a lot of that has had to do with injuries over the years, particularly with New York. But how does he complement Anthony Edwards in this series? I think will be huge. And remember, I got to think in the back of Julius Randle's mind, this feels like forever ago. Remember, he was drafted by the Lakers. Remember, he was let go by the Lakers. And that just never worked out. I think that could be an interesting storyline to hopefully somebody asks him about that at some point, if that's still kind of fueling his fire a little bit.
Yeah, and you talk about fueling fire. I think of looking at the Ant-Man in Minnesota, obviously last year he was able to be the KD slayer in round one, just kind of seeing his personality, and I'm sure you've seen it a lot more than I have, but I feel like there's nothing he'd like better than to go from in 2024 taking out KD in round one and then adding LeBron to that list. I just feel like he's the type of guy that would, kind of like to puff his chest out and say that's on his resume for sure.
Yeah, well, KD is always at the top of his list, remember, because he said KD was Ant-Man's favorite player growing up.
Yeah.
So that was crazy for him last year in the playoffs to get that opportunity. And you said KD slayer. Like, sweep is an understatement of what they did to them in that series. That was awful. Yeah, totally dismantled. So, yeah, you're right. I think it'll be interesting against LeBron as well.
I really like Minnesota in this series. I mean, look, they stumbled through most of the regular season. People kind of forget the trade with the Knicks was just before training camp. And I think for both of those teams, the Knicks and the Wolves, it took them a little while to kind of get their act together with such major changes. But, I mean, Minnesota's front line, I mean, their bigs, I think, are going to be a little bit more than
Bruce,
LA can handle.
Bruce, think about this, though, and this is where the chess match is going to start and end with all these games. J.J. Redick doesn't have very many bigs to go to, right? He's got Jackson Hayes. Does he just commit to playing small ball? Do we see LeBron essentially as the center? And do we see them try and force the hand of Chris Finch? I've spoken and reported on this a lot over the last couple of years. Chris Finch has committed to doing his best to keeping Rudy Gobert on the court. But if LeBron's the 5, can they afford to keep Rudy Gobert on the court? And will Chris Finch stick to that? I think will be a massive storyline in this series.
Yeah, well, the Wolves certainly are hitting the postseason with a head of steam, 17-4 in their last 21 games. So, that's, you want to be playing your best ball at this time of year, and they certainly appear to be. So another interesting matchup out west is going to be Denver against the Clippers, who are also red hot, hitting the finish line of the regular season. Given the current mess in Denver and the momentum that the Clippers are riding, would you be surprised if the Nuggets can get by those guys?
No, because Jokic is the greatest basketball player on planet Earth and maybe beyond that. So no, I wouldn't be necessarily surprised. Listen, I hate to be a cynic here. I just want to see Kawhi start and finish a playoff series, right? Like, obviously there's no reason to believe he won't right now, but there's all the reason to believe that at the same time, because he always seems to get hurt at the wrong time for this team. So I just hope he's healthy. But I also think the other part of this series, which I'm really excited about, is the emergence of Ivica Zubac. We're going to focus so much on this series on the superstars. Kawhi, Harden, obviously Jokic, Jamal Murray, hopefully he's okay and he plays at a high level. But to me, Ivica Zubac has been truly one of the emerging, I wouldn't say stars, but great two-way players in this league. His offensive game in the low post, his defensive game has been sensational. He's going to be on a lot of people's ballots for Defensive Player of the Year. And I think that is absolutely going to be a great matchup with Zubac against Jokic.
It's going to be fantastic. Now, I just want to be sure we cover all our bases here, but any chance the number 1 seed and best team in basketball this year, the Oklahoma City Thunder, get tested by an 8th seed, even if let's say it's the Warriors, let's say that, any chance the Warriors could, pull off one of the greatest upsets ever?
No.
Okay. We just like to cover all our bases here, and we don't want to leave anything up to assumptions. So I had to get it out of you.
That's a good clip for Twitter, by the way. Nice and tight.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Jared, is there any team other than OKC that you think realistically has a legit chance to come out of the West?
There's going to be somebody. Somebody else has to make it to the Western Conference Finals. I just, if you pin me down and put a gun to my head, I have no idea who that team is right now. The West is I've never seen this many teams that if you tell me they lose in the first round or they make it to the conference finals, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I would be fine with either scenario. Clippers, Nuggets, either way. Lose in the first round, make it to the conference finals. Get it. Lakers, lose in the first round, make it to the conference finals. Yeah, I could see either one. I've never seen this many, even the Warriors, right? Like, I could see the Warriors losing to the Rockets in the first round. I could see the Warriors making it all the way to the conference finals. I've never seen this many teams like that before. The only team I feel confident about, and I think we need to put them in a different tier, is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
So OKC, best defensive team. They've got everything they need to win the West, including the probable MVP, although a lot of people are going to say it's Jokic. I believe it's going to be SGA. They shored up their rebounding shortcomings by getting Isaiah Hartenstein. They're a much better rebounding team than last season. So you've got the Celtics coming out of the East, presumably Oklahoma City coming out of the West. Who takes home the Larry O'Brien trophy, Jared?
I think it's the Celtics again. I think that they just have too much firepower. I think the other part of it too, as good as the Thunder have been this year, I think the biggest question for them will be, can Jalen Williams, J-Dub, it doesn't have to be Jalen Williams, but he's been the second best player this year. Maybe it's Chet Holmgren. Who's the second consistent guy every night? Obviously, teams are going to try and key SGA, try and keep him off the foul line. Feels like it's really impossible to do. Teams are going to try and take him out. Who else is making shots? The year that Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe and some of those other guys have had to make big shots, Lou Dort has been a phenomenal three-point shooter this year. But they need that supporting. Listen, I don't want to diminish anything that OKC's done, because I think, as you've seen, I'm very fond of this Thunder team. I love covering them. I love being around them. I love watching them as a fan. But I don't know if you kind of deconstructed this team and took SGA out of the mix for a second and put him off to the side, how many other guys you would pick to be first or second on another team. I think what makes them great is their whole. And SGA makes the other guys so much better than they are. It's not to say that Jalen Williams won't be an all-star for a long time to come, or Chet Holmgren can't be an all-star. He'll be a defensive player of the year candidate for years to come. I'm sure of it. But they need, in the postseason, other guys to come along with them. And that's some comments that SGA made last year after they lost in the second round to Dallas. And some things we've heard, the kind of the tone this year is he's got to be able to carry those guys or put his teammates in position to perform at their highest level when it counts the most. I think that's going to be their biggest question, is who's the second and third scorer? And it doesn't have to be the same guy every night, but can they get consistent productivity from guys outside SGA on the offensive end?
Now, one follow on Oklahoma City Thunder, because you just mentioned they're one of your favorite teams to cover. Of course, they're always one of the best post-game interviews, which I'm sure is a lot of fun for you as well. Yeah. So along those lines, what was your favorite post-game interview this year? I know that you've given that to us in the past, but is there one that stands out?
Man, maybe my favorite post-game interview this year that kind of stumping me, but I would think it was the game where Steph Curry went 8 for 8 from 3-point range. Oh, yeah. And it was the most makes he's ever had without a miss. Right. Mm-hmm. And he was one away from setting the NBA record. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe the record was 9 for 9 from 3 is the all-time record, most makes without a miss. And I asked him why he didn't go for it. And he said, I didn't know. And he said to me in the interview live on TNT, he goes, next time when you have something like that, yell it out to me so I know. And I would have taken another 3. Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
So that's
Raymond Ritter's. That's Raymond Ritter's job.
Exactly.
Yeah. Come on, man.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, before we end the show, Jared, we've got to get your postseason award predictions and picks. And I'll start us off here.
Wait, hold on. Are these my predictions or are these my picks?
Let's go with your picks. Let's get
right. My picks are not necessarily who I think will win. It's who I'm going to be voting for when the ballot comes out.
Yeah. No, thanks for clearing that up for me here. So who's your MVP this season?
I am back and forth, and the ballot we're at the time of this taping right now. The ballot's still a few hours away from hitting our inbox. It's going to come out overnight sometime tonight. I am back and forth, but I am leaning towards Nikola Jokic.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't feel good about it. It makes me upset. And I know people in Oklahoma City are going to be disappointed at me. This is nothing against SGA. He has had, in any other year, a year that he should run away with most valuable player. I just cannot fathom. I understand, and I understand the winning impact of it too. I get it. But I just feel when I look back on this season in 10 years, in 20 years, and to think that a guy was top 3 in every statistical category and was as efficient as he was, and I get that the Nuggets as a team didn't have that great of a year. They still finished 4th in the West. I just think I would regret 10 years from now not voting for Jokic.
Personally, if you took Jokic off of Denver, they're probably about a 28-54 team.
I don't know if they win that many.
Maybe less. All right, my pick is SGA, but I have a question for you because I have said a number of times, SGA is almost like a mini version of Jokic. I'll explain what I mean by that. With Jokic is like this metronome. Goes at his own pace, can't speed him up, can't slow him down. Yeah. And SGA plays the game that way as well. You can't speed him up, you can't slow him down. He's got this sort of like pace in his mind, and he just sticks with it. How do you feel about that comparison? Valid, not valid?
No, I agree with you. It's something that Jason Kidd has talked about. That Jason Kidd recognized when he got older. It's not how fast you can go. It's how slow you can go at times to dictate how the defense guards you. And that's when Jason Kidd talks about he really became smarter and a better player. To be able to downshift, to be able to stop on a dime and slow the defense down is a harder skill at times to do than just go at 100 miles an hour. And that 100 miles an hour is more predictable. And I agree with you. I think SGA has the ability to be sped up, but how methodical he is and how crafty he is. And I want to say on the record, I think this whole foul hunting or whatever they call it thing for SGA is a load of garbage. I think he has been as aggressive, more aggressive than anybody to get to the basket. And he's just at times unguardable.
The one thing he gets away with, though, I think he gets away with palming the ball quite a bit on his dribble. But if they don't call it, then I guess it's But I mean, I notice it with him a lot. Yeah. Again, partially because of that pace that he plays at. That allows him to play at that pace in some ways because he can control the speed of when he puts the ball on the floor.
Right.
Okay. Rookie of the year. My preseason pick is the one I'm sticking with all season long. I felt this way. Stephon Castle. Who do you have?
Yeah, I was running away with Stephon Castle. And then I've really given a lot more thought to Zachary Richeche. I think Richeche deserves a lot of credit, particularly his second half of the year. But I ultimately think I'm going to go with Stephon Castle. And let's give a shout out to Jared McCain, who before he got injured, he looked like he was going to run away with it.
Yeah.
Now, Jared, we know as far as defensive player of the year, it was going to go to Wemby. We were going to name the award after him in about 20 years. He obviously doesn't qualify because of his health issues. So I don't want to denigrate anybody by calling it by default, but who's your choice at this point for defensive player of the year?
I want to pull this up real quick because I just want to say this just to put this in perspective. Victor Wembanyama this year played in 46 games. Okay. And for some context, Brook Lopez played in 82 games. Miles Turner played in 72 games. Okay. So 46. So what is that? Like 34. So Victor Wembanyama played in 34 less games, right, than Brook Lopez. He still won the total block shot. He had 176 block shots. Wemby did in 46 games compared to Brook Lopez, who was second, playing in 80 games, who had 148. It's
insane.
It was insane how good he was defensively this year. Yeah, I'm struggling with defensive player of the year. I had a day last week where I was going to vote for Dyson Daniels.
Yes, that's been my guy all year.
I have been on a Lou Dort kick most recently. And then today I woke up, and if I had the ballot in front of me right now, I would have put Evan Mobley.
Okay.
So you get on the ballot, you get 3 lines for defensive player of the year. 1, 2, and 3 you got to fill out. Those will be my 3 guys. I don't know when I wake up tomorrow morning and I have to fill out this ballot. I have no idea which order I'm putting those 3 in. But it's going to be some combination of Dort, Daniels, Mobley. There's a lot of pressure lately to put Zubats in this list. I want to find a way. He will be first team all defense for me. But to me, it's coming down to those 3. And if one of you guys want to sell me on one of these guys, I'm struggling with defensive player of the year.
I think it's got to be the Great Barrier Thief. I mean, you brought up Wemby's block numbers and what he's been averaging, and even Lopez and Turner. I think what he's been able to do at the guard position for Atlanta has been tremendous this year. And even in games where Trae Young's been unavailable, obviously they lost Jalen Johnson. Yep. I mean, he's kind of been their steady guy all season. I know this is just defensive focus, but in games where he's had to step up offensively, or sometimes his own defense steals leading to offense, has helped this team a ton, and even helped a guy like Reece Shea kind of skyrocket up your Rookie of the Year ranking.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good point. I think I'm going to give him a lot of consideration here.
Yeah.
Great to hear.
I would probably go with Mobley, but yeah, I mean, the entire planet knows that the real guy is Wemby, but didn't play 65. So there you go. Okay. An award that's always up for debate. My preseason pick on most improved player was Cade Cunningham. Yeah. I've been sticking with that one all year long, and I think the team's success should definitely bode well for him. Who do you have for the MIP this year?
So I understand the whole Cade conversation to a certain extent, but he will not be on my ballot, and I'm excluding him because it's hard. I want to be consistent in this argument. So there's probably going to be somebody who listens to this and says, but your pick falls into the same category as Cade. But Cade was a number 1 pick. Yeah. And his numbers, as great as they are really not that much increased year over year. The team's success absolutely is increased. But I don't know. I just have a hard time putting a guy who was the number 1 pick in the draft for fulfilling what we thought he would be. Like, that's not most improved. That's meeting expectation. And just because you maybe either had injuries or underachieved early in your career doesn't mean you should be rewarded for being what we thought you would be once you grew into who you are. So I'm having trouble with most improved player of the year. I've got 4 guys on my list right now for most improved in no particular order. Back to my guy that I've mentioned here 17 times already, Ivica Zubats, Denny Avdia for the Portland Trailblazers, who had a sensational year, Dyson Daniels, who had a great year, not just offensively, but I believe he's almost Dyson Daniels, I believe, is almost 9 points per game better offensively this year than he was last year with New Orleans. And the last one is Ty Jerome. He has meant so much to this team.
So Jared, they don't fall into my qualifications of. I always told these guys before the season, most improved player. You look at the recent history; it's a player who was already pretty good, and then became a little bit better and got his first All-Star appearance that season, and then that kind of paves the way to being most improved. None of those guys make those qualifications.
Who do you have? Who's your guy?
I did like Cade Cunningham. Honestly, I don't have any problem with your reasoning behind it. Therefore, other than that, though, he did go from his shooting really got better. Yeah. His shooting really improved. I know his numbers got better. He was already a pretty good player, but he really did take that next step. And according to how the qualifications seem to be for this award, that would fall in line for him to come away with it. If if you follow recent history. I like Zubats, really, if you're going to go the way you said it. I like Zubats as a really improved player.
I think another guy, by the way, who I don't think is going to qualify is Norm Powell on that Clippers team, but I don't think he's going to qualify.
So who would you go with, Jared, for Coach of the Year? This is a tough one.
It is. And to me, it comes down to something that I've tried to be really consistent about over the last few years. I could make an argument for four guys: Kenny Atkinson, JB Bickerstaff, Mark Daignault, and Ime Udoka. What throws a wrench in my typical formula, if you will, is how historic Detroit's improvement is. Tripling your wins, getting not just in the play-in, but out of the play-in and into the top six. That's remarkable. But for me, like, too many times I feel like, and this is like a societal thing that I hate, like it's like the participation trophy thing, where greatness is in front of us, but we're going to reward relative mediocrity because of how bad it was previously. And again, not to take a shot at Detroit or JB Bickerstaff. In most years, I understand why he would win it. But Cleveland went from a team that was middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference to fighting for best team in basketball all year. And I would hate to give the award to Detroit and JB Bickerstaff for tripling their win total and setting history, but being a 6 seed when in front of me, I've got the best team in basketball, Oklahoma City, and I've got Cleveland, who was the best team in their own conference. So for me, I'm going to go Kenny Atkinson. I'm going to go JB Bickerstaff 2, and then put Ime Udoka number 3.
One of the things that you said on, I think, your very first appearance on this show a couple of years ago, you had this quote, and it's stuck with me all this time, and I use it frequently. You said, it's a lot harder. It's easier to go from bad to good than it is to go from good to great.
Yeah.
And Atkinson took those guys from good to potentially great.
Yes.
So that logic that, has stuck with me really kind of sums up why you're giving him the Coach of the Year award.
Absolutely. 100%, Bruce. It's, and they've got a lot more work to do, but as we all know, these awards are based on regular season, 82 games. And I love it because I think it helps put a little more validity into the regular season, which unfortunately over the last several years has lost a lot of its integrity.
Okay, final question. We're TV people here. With TNT finishing up its 36-year run doing NBA games, all of NBA Nation, especially your partners on this show today, are going to miss their incredible coverage. You have been an integral part of it for the last 13 years. So what thoughts are going through your mind as the final 6 weeks of the NBA coverage on TNT are about to begin?
Yeah, it stinks. No question about it. It hit me the other night when I was doing the game in Indiana, when I was watching the pregame show. Hopefully you guys got to see it. The really cool touch that the guys did in Atlanta, where they did the pregame show from outside of our studios, where all the employees got to bring their friends and family to the event and watch the studio show live. This has been part of my family for a long time, and it's been the greatest, 13, 14 years of my life. And I'm excited to see what comes next. I think it'll be a lot of fun, but I think the cool thing to know is, we've set the standard, and people come to watch us because they don't want to just watch basketball. They want to have fun. And we deliver that on a nightly basis.
You absolutely do. And we definitely appreciate all your work at TNT. Looking forward to seeing you wherever your path might take you here in the future, Jared. And want to thank you for joining us here on 48 Minutes today.
Thank you.
It's always awesome being with you guys. It's great to talk hoops with guys who are as passionate as you are.
Well, and good luck sleeping tonight as that ballot drops in your inbox, because you got some tough choices there.
Yes.
So hopefully we helped you, just
You
get
did.
it out there.
Yeah.
So, break it down. So awesome. Well, with that, Jared, thanks for joining us. And that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline.ag. thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date and 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.
Jared,
Awesome.
you're the best, man. We really, really appreciate you.
You got it. Appreciate
That
you
was
guys.
fun.
Yeah, and I am going to send you that picture of Hamilton House.
Oh, great. Yeah, let me know. Maybe I'll see if I can recognize it.
Because you're going to look at that thing and you're going to say, you're tripping, Bruce. There's no way you guys use that place as your newsroom. But I swear to God, Mike Breen worked in that building with me. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, Mike Breen. And I'll send you the very young picture of Mike Breen in my office in that building, too. It was pretty,
Oh, that's
pretty,
cool.
pretty,
That's really
pretty
cool.
memorable, bizarre, fun days.
That's
but
awesome.
again, thank you so much, Jared. And if there's anything you need from me,
I appreciate it.
Amina, whatever, just
Thank
please
you.
let me know. Anything, I'd
Thank
always be happy to do whatever I can to help you.
Appreciate it, Bruce. Ross,
All
Michael,
right.
appreciate you guys. Hopefully I'll
Yep.
talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
See you guys.
Thank
So long,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.